Hello student, I am Professor Smita Jha from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Roorkee, and I am here to discuss research methodology. Well, in the series of research methodology lecture or course, now we are here to discuss epistemology and ontology, the two important paradigms to pursue a meaningful research. Let us see the role of epistemology and ontology in a significant research process. So, how can understanding philosophy improve our research? These are the pertinent questions coming to the mind of a potential researcher. How can an understanding of what frames our research influence our choices? Do researchers' personal thoughts and beliefs shape research design, outcomes, and interpretation? Well, these are the basic thoughts on which a researcher should construct his design of pursuing research. Now, these questions are all important for social sciences and humanities research. Here we present a philosophical guide for researcher to assist in the production of effective social science and research. The entire process is scientific. If we talk of research, it is objective. Therefore, I always call it a scientific process. So, understanding philosophy is important because social science and humanity research can only be meaningfully interpreted when there is clarity about the decisions that were taken that affect the research outcomes. Yes, clarity of thought, because the entire research process is based on your thought process. Philosophy provides the general principles of theoretical thinking, a method of cognition, perspective, and self awareness, all of which are used to obtain knowledge of reality and to design, conduct, analyze, and interpret research and its outcome. So, see, design, conduct, analyze, interpret. These are the vital activities and a very important thought while designing your research. So, research involves answering questions, and the approach utilized is based on paradigms, philosophical assumptions, and distinct methods or procedures. Researchers' approaches are influenced by their worldviews, which comprise their beliefs and philosophical assumptions about the nature of the world and how it can be understood. These ways of thinking about the world are known as research paradigms. That is why it is very important to understand epistemology and ontology together. And they inform, means these paradigms, as a part of philosophy, they inform the design and conduct of research projects. So, a paradigm constitutes a set of theories, assumptions, and ideas that contribute to one's worldview and approach to engaging with other people or things. It is the lens through which a researcher views the world and examines the methodological components of their research to decide on the methods to use for data collection and analysis. If we talk of research paradigm, it consists of basic four philosophical elements, and we can name it like axiology, ontology, epistemology, methodology. See, this is very important to know about each and every because they are interrelated, interdependent, and based on these philosophies and school of thought, a researcher can design a good research. So let us discuss first ontology. I have already discussed earlier also, but here I am discussing, in relation to other. So ontology is how reality is viewed, that is nature of reality, accurately captured as an entity or entities. It is the study of being and describes how the researcher perceives reality and the nature of human engagement in the world. It is focused on the assumptions researchers make to accept something as true. Now, these assumptions aid in orienting a researcher thinking about the research topic, its importance, and the possible approach to answering the question. It makes the researcher ask questions such as, what is real in the natural or social world? How do I know what I know? How do I understand or conceptualize things? Now, ontology tries to understand what is it to exist, to be, or not to be. It is quite hard to articulate coherent ideas in this area, though this has not stopped people from trying. Our brains, as far as we know, exist and evolved in a universe and on a planet where things do. So very concept we can imagine involves existence, even our fantasies, which, while they are parented, still are of things with their own type of existence. An example of an ontological consideration in qualitative research would be a researcher studying the lived experiences of homeless individuals, deciding whether to approach homelessness as a fixed, objective reality that exists independently of individual perception, a realist ontology, or as a socially constructed concept that varies depending on the individual's experiences and perspective, a constructionist ontology. Now, key points about this example can be first, realist ontology. Now, in this case, the researcher would assume that homelessness is a clear, definable state that can be measured and analyzed objectively, potentially leading to a focus on quantifiable data like shelter uses or income levels. Now, if we talk of constructionist ontology, a researcher adopting this perspective would view homelessness as something actively created through social interactions and interpretations, leading to a focus on in depth interviews to understand how individuals experience and define their own housing situations. Other examples are also there of ontological consideration in qualitative research, like studying organizational culture. So, deciding whether to view organizational culture as a stable set of shared values, that is realist, or as a fluid, dynamic set of meanings constantly negotiated by employees, that is constructionist. So, one has to make distinction between the realist or the constructionist under the umbrella term of ontology. Now, investigating patient experiences in healthcare, if we take this in the medical humanities, considering whether patient experiences are best understood as objective facts, that is realist, or as subjective interpretation influenced by their social context, that is constructionist. Researching gender identity, that is another important aspect, deciding whether to treat gender as a fixed biological category, that is the reality, that is the existing thing, or as a socially constructed identity that individual actively perform, constructionist. I'm just narrating all these things because when you pursue a research, you have to design the frame, and while designing the frame you have to use your existing knowledge, and based on that you construct. So reality versus constructive. Now, to illustrate, realist ontology relates to the existence of one single reality which can be studied, understood, and experienced as a truth. A real world exists independent of human experience. Meanwhile, relativist ontology is based on the philosophy that reality is constructed within the human mind such that no one true reality exists. Instead, reality is relative according to how individuals experience it at any given time and place. The second branch is epistemology, the study of knowledge. Epistemology is concerned with all aspects of the validity, scope, and methods of acquiring knowledge, such as what constitutes a knowledge claim. Next, how can knowledge be acquired or produced? And last, how the extent of its transferability can be assessed. So, epistemology is important because it influences how researchers frame their research in their attempts to discover knowledge. By looking at the relationship between a subject and an object, we can explore the idea of epistemology and how it influences research design. Objectivist epistemology assumes that reality exists outside or independently of the individual mind. Objectivist research is useful in providing reliability, consistency of results obtained, and external validity, applicability of the results to other contexts. So, constructionist epistemology rejects the idea that objective, that is, truth, exists and is waiting to be discovered. Instead, truth or meaning arises in and out of our engagement with the realities in our world. That is, a real world does not pre exist independently of human activity or symbolic language. The value of constructionist research is in generating contextual understanding of a defined topic or problem. Subjectivist epistemology relates to the idea that reality can be expressed in a range of symbol and language systems and is stretched and shaped to fit the purposes of individuals, such as that people impose meaning on the world and interpret it in a way that makes sense to them. For example, a scuba diver might interpret a shadow in the water according to whether they were alerted to a shark in the area. Now, waiting for a boat, that is boat, or expecting a change in the weather, that is cloud. The value of subjectivist research is in revealing how an individual's experience shape their perception of the world. And yes, research is your perception. Now, if we talk of philosophical perspectives stemming from ontology, what exists for people to know about, and epistemology, how knowledge is created and what is possible to know, are philosophical perspectives, a system of generalized view of the world, which form beliefs that guide action. Now, philosophical perspectives are important because when made explicit, they reveal the assumptions that researchers are making about their research, leading to choices that are applied to the purpose, design, methodology, and methods of the research, as well as to data analysis and interpretation. At the most basic level, the mere choice of what to study in the sciences imposes values on one's subject. How does your philosophical standpoint affect your research? That you need to explore. What are your experience of clashing philosophical perspectives in interdisciplinary research? How did you become aware of them and resolve them? Do you think that researchers need to recognize different philosophies in interdisciplinary research terms? These are the questions, leading towards philosophical exploration while pursuing research. How ontology and epistemology relate in research? So when we talk of the first point come positivism. An ontological stance assumes a single objective reality, often paired with an epistemological belief that knowledge can be gained through quantitative methods like experiments. Interpretativism, an ontological stance viewing reality as socially constructed and subjective, is often paired with an epistemological approach that emphasizes qualitative methods like interviews to understand meanings and interpretation. Now, key points to remember in this direction: that choice of research method is influenced by ontological and epistemological assumption. If you believe reality is objective and measurable, you might choose quantitative methods, while a belief in subjective realities might lead to qualitative approaches. Further, researchers should be aware of their own ontological and epistemological assumptions. Like, recognizing these assumptions helps in interpreting research findings and avoiding bias. So, relationship between epistemology or ontology lead to how we define reality, that is objective or subjective, influences what can we know. How we know epistemology influences what can be known, which shapes our ontological assumptions. And we talk about research implications, we can say that epistemology and ontology are important in research design because they shape how we define reality and how we know about it. So, epistemology and ontology are often linked to research paradigms. Now, what is actual reality is not known reality at all. Those who adopt a constructivist perspective recognize that we don't have access to red pills that allow us to see what is really real. Our knowledge is only of what we think is true, putting aside what might actually be true. When we talk to Neo, it will be a Neo without access to a red pill. We can still learn a lot from Neo about the world he lives in, even if it is more properly only the world he thinks he lives in. If we talk about Plato, whose contribution is immense, and we talk of philosophies and the school of thought, we can say that according to him, truth lays in an abstract ideal. We can apply the fundamental principles of mathematical proof, that is logic, to locate to the true form of these transcendented truths or ideals. The natural world we perceive through our senses, means see, hear, touch, reveals only a fallen shadow, incomplete versions of this ideal truth. The true forms of natural things or of concepts exist in the way that mathematical truths or forms exist. Thus, attempting to understanding the truth of things by examining the natural world is not only folly, but likely dangerously misleading. Thus, philosophical contemplation, thinking logically rather than observation, is the road towards truth. All the other arts, including poetry and argumentation, only confuse us more, tricking us into believing false visions of truth. Like we mistake what we see on the television for reality, a cunning lawyer can trick a stupid jury into believing the guilty innocent. This is for the example. So, in a nutshell, Plato's mystical idealism will be adopted by subsequent generations of Christians to explain the nature of God. If we talk of Aristotle and his analytic empiricism, if we can apply the fundamental principles of mathematical proofs to locate to the true form of nature in natural things. Through the systematic observation and analysis, that is breaking down and classification of the natural world in combination with rigorous logic, we can make true statements about the natural world and understand the nature of essence, what something is, the nature of causes, why things occur. Unlike Plato, Aristotle also believes that the other arts are very useful for helping us understanding things. Aristotle's in-depth treatment of correct methodology for achieving these types of understanding created what we would now call science, or the scientific method, means with a sense of detachment. The relationship between ontology, epistemology, and methodology and methods is intricate and pivotal in shaping the direction of research. The choice of ontological stance, whether realist or relativist, fundamentally influences the epistemological approach, which in turn guides the selection of research methodology and methods. I will also discuss, the difference between methodology and method, because methodology is different from method. But while moving or selecting, the research topic, these philosophical school may help you immensely. By critically analyzing these connections, researchers can navigate the complex terrain of research philosophy, ultimately driving the design and execution of studies that align with their chosen ontological and epistemological perspectives. This awareness is essential for conducting rigorous and meaningful research across various fields and contexts. Research is always motivated by human curiosity. It is the curiosity to know more and know better about the social world we live in. It acts as the fundamental drive in our expansion of knowledge. This drive for research and recognition is always manifest in science, the formulation and innovation of new ideas and technologies. But in philosophy, this curiosity for cognition is not always readily manifest, but are to be discerned as the very inner design of research. Ontology is usually also taken to encompass problems about the most general features and relations of the entities which do exist. There are also a number of classic philosophical problems that are problems in ontology understood this way. For example, the problem of how a universal relates to a particular that has it, assuming there are universals and particulars, or the problem of how an event like John eating a cookie relates to the particular John and the cookie, and the relation of eating, assuming there are events, particulars, and relations. So, ontology is the study of existence, and we have seen how epistemology is the study of knowledge. So, both are branches of philosophy. So, the study of what exists, including everyday objects, living beings, and ideas, concerned with what is true or real, concerned with what human can know about the world. Because your research is truth, reality, and you establish the reality with your argument, with the statement, with citing, other critics. So epistemology, again, the study how we can know things, including possibility, scope, general basic knowledge. So how and why, that is ontology and epistemology. Concerning with the validity, scope, methods of your knowledge, the base knowledge that you already have, and developing that knowledge, based knowledge for using, pursuing a meaningful research. Concerned with how we separate true ideas from false ideas. So relationship between ontology and epistemology often ask related question, like ontology asks what exists, epistemology asks how we can know about the existence of such a things, means argument, sources, that also called data analysis. Concerned with the validity, scope, and methods of acquiring knowledge, concerned with how we separate true ideas from false ideas. Relationship between ontology and epistemology, ontology, epistemology often asked some questions like what exists and how could we know that what is the reality. So it is the study of being and existence. So this is different from a scientific question where they go out and look for things to see if they exist. We analyze concepts to see, everything is abstract. We analyze concept to see if a thing should fit with the concept of existence and what the concept of existence is. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. What do we mean when we say we know something? Is a justified, true belief knowledge? What is justification? Do we need certainty? Is justification an internal process or an external one? Two dominant epistemology perspectives, positivism and interpretivism, have been extensively discussed, in academic literature and especially in the research of humanities and social sciences. As we all know and discussed several times, that positivism advocates for empirical observation and often employs quantitative methods to deduce generalizable facts. In contrast, interpretivism emphasizes understanding the meanings and experiences of individuals, often utilizing qualitative methods to explore the depth and complexity of social phenomena. Researchers' epistemological stances guide their approach to inquiry, affecting everything from hypothesis formulation to data interpretation. So, objectivism is the belief in an external reality whose existence is independent of knowledge of it. The world exists as an independent object waiting to be discovered. Since the reality is objective, it is equally accessible to any observer that can be verified independently using our five senses and logical reasoning. Independently here means that different people, all having the same relationship to an object, make similar observations about it. Their observation should not be biased by their personal views or the context in which they are embedded. The point of knowing these things is an understanding that as a social scientist, using the right methods in the right way is crucial to sound research. These issues should be in our thought, but not necessarily all the time. But we must be aware of reflexivity as a key aspect of methodology. This means that our own biases and conceptions of knowledge can influence our research decisions, in particular, how our understanding of their understanding is affected by these. Once we have our ontology and our epistemology under control, we can often look at our methodology. So, unless you are a post-structuralist, the crucial link flows from ontology to epistemology to methodology. Positivism leads to general statements about the relationship between social phenomena and points towards if-then, statements that hold for the population. Now, let us look at all research design in series. So, positivism, as I said, one of the school of thought. So, positivism covers theory, then hypothesis, then testing, then falsification, and then re-specification of the theory. If we talk of critical realism, then we talk of theory, identification of the problem, empirical investigation, interpretation of the result, which is theory, dependent, changing elements of theory, if your theory can explain what another theory cannot. If we talk of interpretivism, then it is narratives rather than theory, as narratives are one understanding of reality. That is interpreting the text, which narrative or discourse is dominant. This is about that. And if we talk of measure-minor approach, that is positivist measure is equal to quantitative. And then it is minor, then equal to qualitative. So your work must be quantitative if you want to make generalizable statements. So try to understand positivism for the quantitative, while interpretativism is for the qualitative research. There is no doubt that one can only grasp the sociological knowledge when examining the process of thoughts that stand behind every single research in social science. In essence, the ontological and epistemological positions represent the basis of the work of political scientists. On the surface, these positions are often not apparent, but they can be demonstrated by the process of methodology. Therefore, it is, to a large degree, necessary to apprehend the connection between the foundation of research. Ontology and epistemology play a very significant role in philosophy, but also in the work of political scientists, because both terms are used in relation to the discussion of theoretical issues in their thesis. It can be argued that these theoretical positions are fundamental to their process of research and scientists' inclination to subject as they shape the approach to theory and the methods that are employed by social scientists. It is vital to recognize that both ontology and epistemology are mainly based on the researcher's belief and personal persuasion about the conception of world and have certain methodological consequences. Now, the first term ontology can be used to relate to the scientific and philosophical theory of being. It primarily deals with the elementary structure of the world and what exactly does it signifies to exist in that world. In other words, ontology is concerned with the question, is there a real world out there that is independent of our knowledge of it? And likewise, epistemology represents theory of knowledge, and its epistemological assumption focused on the study, the nature of the world, how we know what we know. So see, the relationship between epistemology and ontology is, very deep. So positivist epistemology views the world as existing independently of knowledge of it. Therefore, the objectivity is achievable due to the fact that the things are perceived by individuals in the identical manner. Second, interpretivist epistemology concern with the disputability of objective or value-free observation, which is largely influenced by the personal perceptions and social constructions of the world. The key aspect of this argument is that the essence of the world is illuminated by various actors whose interpretations are constructed or construed by the observer. Therefore, this double hermeneutic results in limited objectivity. And the term methodology arises from the ontological and epistemological position of the researcher. Therefore, it is more than evident that between ontology, epistemology, and methodology is close interconnection. Methodology is mainly associated with the design of the research and the approach to data analysis. Furthermore, this term is generally employed to refer to the whole process of data collection, that is, the material collection in the research. It is indispensable to realize that certain types of epistemologies require the specific use of survey methods. According to Mars and Furlong, ontology and epistemology represents a skin, not a sweater. Therefore, it is clearly impossible to put on and take off these research foundations whenever the research chooses. This reflects the methodological consequences of different positions and indicates that researchers demand various positions in order to account for their selected method. Nevertheless, the ontological positions are very significant in terms of interrelationship between epistemology and methodology. Thus, it could be said that certain ontological positions result in epistemological positions. Now, it is worth noting that the foundationalist belief, that is, ontology, represent a premise for positivist or a realist traditions, that is, epistemology of research, whereas the anti-foundationalist views result in an interpretativist position. This implies that there is a strong link between all components of research. Therefore, it is vital to approach these major blocks of research collectively. According to Mechon, the role of epistemology lies in the fact that it leads to creation of knowledge and explanations about the ontological component of social world. Moreover, it is substantial to realize that there might be more than one particular epistemology. Thus, at the same time, they will not be analogous or coincident with their own ontological position. However, it is clear that various epistemological positions require to employ a diverse methodology. Therefore, it can be argued that there is dependency between epistemology and methodology. Another relevant point is, how can we have a theory about what knowledge is without some presupposition about the nature of the knowledge? Therefore, in Spencer's opinion, ontology is prior to epistemology so that knowledge can be logically generated from their close relationship. While these two concepts are narrowly related, they have to be kept separate in order to start the research from a person's view of the world. In conclusion, it is extremely crucial to recognize that these three theoretical positions play a pivotal role in a set of conceptions concerning the research theory. Due to the high level of generality, ontology is a type of concept that is rarely utilized. However, epistemology and methodology are used more frequently. Most importantly, ontology, epistemology, and methodology are interlinked and dependent on each other, and together denotes the most important contrast between various ways of knowing. Finally, Mars and Furlong maintain a position that there is an evident interdependence between epistemology and methodology. Also, he sees a directional dependence, means giving a direction in relation to ontology, epistemology, and methodology, that is, cohesiveness, a sequence wise. However, Smith advocates that it is not possible to create a hierarchy between these terms because all of them are narrowly interrelated together. With this, I wrap up the discussion of the topic that discussed the relationship between ontology and epistemology and in relation methodology. So see, this is very, very important because the main task is how you are going to develop the topic in question and then the assumptions, the hypothesis, because your assumptions lead to the questions of the research and also the objective. In next lecture, we are going to discuss phenomenology, which is another important school of thought. Till then, thank you very much.